Hello. So today we're going to talk about mental and physical survival. And it's really important to talk about these things. I know they're not always the most exciting things to talk about, but they are the basis for survival in most situations, right? Physically being able to do what you need to do to get out of a bad situation. But also, more importantly, probably mentally, just being able to keep yourself together and also keep others together, especially in bad situations. So I think, kind of the important things are assessing where you are right now, figuring out where you want to be or need to be, making a plan on how to get there, and then also importantly, be honest with yourself. So what we're going to talk about first is physical preparation, and I think it's important to know your strengths and your weaknesses. So it's important to know your strengths, but I think it's also even more important to know and accept your limits. Because if you're in a survival situation and somebody's got to move like 100-pound box, and you can't lift a 100-pound box, and you try to do it anyway, and you injure yourself, right? Well, you just put yourself in a worse situation, right? Because you're in this survival situation, and now you have an injury, and the injury was completely preventable because you knew you couldn't do that in the first place. So if you had to move a 100-pound box, maybe you could unload it, maybe you could get somebody to help you, right? So know what you can and can't do and accept those situations and limitations so you don't actually make the situation worse. So some important things to do, right? I'm guilty of this myself. I hate going to the doctor. I hate going to the dentist, but you should do these things regularly, right? You should go to the doctor regularly. You should go to the dentist regularly. If you go to the doctor, if you have any underlying health issues, you could work to get those taken care of, or how can you live successfully with these underlying health issues, right? So if you have these issues, right, you want to make sure that you're doing things that make sure that these don't become a greater issue in your life. Go to the dentist. I can't stress this enough. Dental issues don't get better, right? If you have a tooth that's hurting you, it's just going to continue to get worse, right? So get it taken care of now, right? So that you don't end up in a situation where you don't have access to a dentist and it just gets worse, right? And I'll just give you a little food for thought. A lot of the early humans died from abscessed teeth, right? Their teeth would get infected and it would abscess, and then that abscess would lead to infection, and a lot of your teeth have nerves that go straight up to your brain, and it would cause brain infection and people would die. So go to the dentist. The next thing you should do is develop some kind of a fitness plan. And it doesn't have to be, super intense. It doesn't have to be super strenuous, right? But it should require you to move a little bit every day, right? So, survival in a situation that depends on fitness, it often just involves being able to, walk a long distance and have the ability to kind of put one foot in front of the other. So it's not the strongest or the fastest, but simply the ability to move and, a little bit of stamina to keep going. So, when you do this, right, start small. You don't have to, be the strongest or the fastest person, but, you should be, working towards some kind of a goal. All right, so if we switch gears a little bit, right, we're going to go to mental survival and preparation, right? And I'm going to preface this, I'm not a mental health professional, but I know that mental health has become a huge issue for a lot of people in the last couple of years. And so I think it's really important to, kind of know yourself mentally, keep an eye on the mental health of, people around you. And, if you feel like you need, some professional mental health help, please reach out and do so. So in survival situations, people have different responses to, bad situations that can range from panic, depression, hyperactivity, right? Some people go totally crazy, guilt, fear, even suicide, right? People have been known to commit suicide in situations where, they just had to sit tight and wait for help for a few hours. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the 4 stages of psychological progression in a survival situation. And so, we live in Florida, and one of the things that we have to deal with here in Florida is hurricanes. And, hurricanes are kind of a weird thing because, they can definitely be pretty bad, but we also know for like a week that a hurricane is coming. And so I think they're a great example for when we talk about, the psychological progression. So, but it also leads to a lot of stress because, we have a week to prepare and a week to watch and a week to worry. So in the 4 stages of psychological progression, right? The first one is the pre-impact stage, right? So imagine we're watching this hurricane and it's coming. And so what do people do, right? How do people react? Right, well, there's the, calm and appropriate reaction, right? So let's take the steps that we need to prepare, gather supplies, put up your hurricane shutters, right? If you, if you live in Florida and you know that we deal with hurricanes, you probably already have some supplies on hand. This actually ends up being a pretty small percentage of people. A lot of people sometimes will just ignore the situation, hope for the best, and say, well, somebody else will take care of it. It's not going to be that bad, right? They're not the, let's prepare just in case type of crowd. And then some people totally overreact, right? These are the people that go out and they buy up every drop of gasoline or all the bottled water. And, we see this a lot too. And we saw this during the pandemic. There's probably people that are still out there using toilet paper that they bought in 2020, and we'll probably have enough toilet paper for the next several years because they bought so much of it. These are the overreactors. So the next stage is the impact stage, right? So the disaster is essentially here. This is when we're in the middle of the hurricane or, whatever situation. And we just kind of have to sit through it or, deal with, the consequences of whatever's happening around us. So, again, it's going to be that small percentage that actually act appropriately and remain totally calm through the situation. It's a very difficult thing to do. A lot of people are going to act bewildered or stunned. They just don't know what to do, right? You see these people just kind of with a confused look on their face. This is going to be the majority of people. And then, the total opposite of being calm, right? Some people are going to have an extreme response, right? So they're just going to go totally crazy. And, these are people you have to worry about because they're not only a danger to themselves, they could also be a danger to others. The third stage is the recoil stage. This is where we supposedly go back to normal, right? So the disaster is over. We're kind of adjusting our life back to normal. And then the fourth stage is actually kind of a weird one, right? It's called the post-trauma stage. And this is where we should have gone back to normal. And on the outside, everything kind of looks normal around us, but we don't quite feel as normal as it should be. And this is because of the emotional impact on our mental health that whatever this, situation has caused. So like life just doesn't feel right. You might feel guilty, you might feel depressed, you might feel tired, you might feel, post-traumatic stress syndromes, and another thing called adrenal fatigue, which I'll talk about in a minute. So, if you've been in Florida for a couple of years, you probably remember Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was a pretty big hurricane. And so, this is just kind of like my experience with the hurricane, right? So going through this pre-impact stage for me, it was definitely my first major hurricane here in Florida. And so, I had a fairly new house. It's built to, like the newest hurricane codes. And so it should withstand 160 mile an hour winds. And I was like, okay, well, we should be fine in the house. So I put the shutters up. We bought some supplies. I already had some stuff. I cleaned out my garage so that I could fit both cars in the garage. I looked up my home survey, right? I found out, the height of the house above the road and then also the height of the house above sea level. So, when I looked at my flood zone, so when they're talking about these things, like I knew, where my house stood, they talked about how much water they were going to have. The last thing that we did is, right, we packed a car ahead of time, right? We had 2 cars. We packed one of them up. We put, some important documents, some stuff that we might need if we had to leave. We put some pet supplies in the car. So if we had to leave, we could actually just, jump in the car, put our pets in the car, and get out of here. But if you remember, right, at the same time, we also saw people that were buying all the bottled water. We saw gas stations that were buying, selling bottled water for, $40 a case. People buy all the stuff in the grocery store, all the gasoline. But we had planned to stay, and then, the thing though is that we had eventually we had a mandatory evacuation for my neighborhood. It was just optional before, but then they said mandatory evacuation because there's supposedly going to be 9 feet of water above the street in my house, which meant that my house was 3 feet above the road, which meant I would have 6 feet of water in my house. And, I couldn't risk that with my family and my pets in the house. But we saw that a lot of people were kind of stuck on the highways, but I waited until the day before the storm, right? I was basically when they told us that, my neighborhood should evacuate. And we got out of Florida with almost no traffic. We got out of Florida in 6.5 hours, which is pretty standard. We found gas in Orlando, and I got gas in Georgia, and eventually we got a hotel in South Carolina. So that was my pre-impact stage, right before the storm got here. The next morning I got up in the hotel and, I took my dogs for a walk, but, there's not a whole lot to do when you're just in a hotel for the sake of being out of your house. So I walked my dogs around and, I figured I should, work on doing something. So I went around town and, bought up any gas cans that I could still find and put gas in them. So I basically had, a tank of gas in my car and, a few spare gas canisters to get me home. And so this way I know I could make it all the way back to my house without having to stop for gas, which, was something I was concerned about. But then, right, I didn't have anything to do. So I basically just kind of sat around all day and refreshed my cell phone, right? I was watching the storm as it's barreling down on my house. I kept checking, the community Facebook page that I was part of at the time, for anybody with any updates. And you just kind of sit there in this stupor. So I will admit, I was just kind of oh, I don't know what to do. You just kind of sit there and I just stared at my phone, refreshing everything every couple of minutes. So then, the storm had passed. The next morning we got up and I was like, listen, all these people left Florida. We got to get home. And, it was this crazy journey getting back home, right? Some of the highways were, flooded and trees were on the highway and stuff like that. But, I had an all-wheel drive vehicle. And so we kind of, had to bushwhack along the highways a little bit, but we had all the gas we needed. We had all the food we needed. So we basically were able to make it home with, just hitting a couple of rest stops, which were also sort of disaster areas at the time. I got home, I had power, I had internet, minimal damage to my house. I basically spent, the next day kind of cleaning up the yard. I replanted a couple of trees and, fixed a couple of small things in my house, but, literally nothing to complain about for the damages to my house. But I was home, and then the weird thing was that literally nothing to worry about. I didn't quite feel right. We even had the next 2 weeks off of work, but it was just I was tired and I got plenty of sleep and we didn't have any work to do. And I read this article about adrenal fatigue, which, again, self-diagnosed here, but it's the idea that your adrenaline gland was just kind of on overdrive for, a period of time. And now your body's not able to produce enough adrenaline and, you just don't quite feel right. And, it really made sense for me because, I spent a couple of days worrying about this storm, watching it get closer and closer. But then basically I had this crazy 72 hours of leaving Florida, getting to the hotel, watching the storm, getting back to Florida. And so, I think that's what happened. But, the other thing is too, that we're all in this society, this, sort of post-pandemic society. I know there's still issues going on with it. But I think the whole pandemic thing did a number on a lot of people's mental health too, because, we all spent so long, just kind of worrying about it. And, is it going to affect our health, our family's health, our jobs, our living situations, school? And we all spent months or even years just kind of in this, constant worry state. And I think that, really impacted a lot of people's mental health. So if we move on just a little bit, when we're in stressful situations, right, we have things that are called aggregating factors, but then also we have motivating factors. And so aggregating factors are like fatigue, being hungry, being thirsty, being too cold, being too hot, and being wet, right? And so these aggregating factors, right, are real simple to, take account for, right? So if you're hungry or thirsty, like it's never a bad idea to just, keep a granola bar or an extra bottle of water in your car or your bag or your office. And the same thing, right? They make some, pretty small rain jackets that like kind of crumple up into a little ball. I always keep one of those in my backpack. We live in Florida, it rains all the time. How many times have you gotten caught in the rain and then you've had to go inside an air-conditioned building for the next 2 hours and you're cold and wet and miserable? That rain jacket, will keep you dry, but even if you go into another building and it's cold, you can always just pull it on. It looks kind of like a windbreaker, an extra layer to keep you warm. So real simple things that we can just keep with us. So we'll talk some about that this semester as well. Other things that we could think about, right, are just kind of like proper training, right? So if you have like all this survival stuff and you don't know how to use any of it, it's not really going to do any good. But like a real simple example is like the spare tire in your car. A flat tire is something that like we all may have to deal with at some point in time. And we all know that, somewhere in the back of my car, there's a spare tire, but like, have you ever used it? Have you ever used the car jack, right? So, you may worry about getting a spare tire because, you have the supplies, but you don't really feel confident in changing a tire. So like, training in that situation. So if you find somebody that knows what they're doing and they show you how to change your tire, and then you realize like, oh, wow, this isn't actually that hard and I know how to do it, right? Being afraid of a flat tire is something that you're not really that worried about anymore because you know how to change a tire. So some more motivating factors, right? So if people are in a survival situation, one thing that really helps is what's your motivation or what's their motivation for survival, right? So do I want to get back to my family? Do I want to get back to my house? I'm like an animal lover, right? So do I want to get back to my pets? Like I wonder like, what will my dog think if I never come home? Will he think I didn't love him? Right, so stuff like that. I think it's important to not focus on the negative. You should always be positive and also be hopeful. And then in group situations, right, if somebody's being really negative, that could really impact the mental health of the entire group. So once you've taken care of yourself and you feel that you're able to kind of help somebody else, you should do so, right? Because helping other people makes you feel better. And then if that person is being kind of negative, if you give them a job, right, something to do, I think this also helps a lot of people. And so it kind of helps keep their mind off of things. It gives them a purpose, and that will also promote their mental health as well. What can we all do in our daily lives to, promote our own mental health, right? I think keeping a schedule is important. We should do some things that promote our own mental health. We should monitor the info that goes into our brains, right? So we turn our phones on, our TVs, our computers, and we're just kind of blasted with this, faucet of knowledge. And some of this information is real, some of it's fake, some of it's exaggerated, some of it has a political bias. And I think it's important to kind of be vigilant about, we're putting, into ourselves and, how we allow that to kind of shape our beliefs and our actions. I'm not saying don't trust the news or anything like that, but what I am saying is kind of take everything with a grain of salt. And if, something sounds, good or bad, do your own time or do your own research and take some time to kind of like think about this before we act on it, before we share on it. And I think that's, a really important thing to do. I definitely think it's important to remain connected to, some kind of news or information source in a survival situation. But it's also important to kind of unplug from that. I know, when there's disasters going on and you watch the news, you just sit and you get sucked in and you watch the same thing over and over again. And the media likes to, kind of keep people hooked because it's good for their ratings, but it's not really good for your mental health, right? So kind of check back in from time to time. If you need mental health help, please do so, right? Reach out and, help take care of yourself before you end up in a bad situation. So a little bit about what I do in my daily life, right? So, I try and exercise every day. So I set up a little gym in my garage. I've got my own house, so I have my, the space to do that. So, that may not work for everybody. But, I used to find a lot of fitness stuff at, garage sales and thrift stores and things like that. And even buying some of the stuff new, I think it's pretty comparable to paying a monthly gym fee, right? Because you don't have to buy an entire set of weights all at once because, you can't lift the super heavy stuff at once. But if you buy, some of the smaller stuff and the next month you buy a little bit heavier stuff as you improve, you're not spending, thousands of dollars all at once. I try and run every day. I try and do 5K once a day. I lift weights a couple of times a week, and I try and take a walk with my wife and my dogs every evening. Mentally, I think we're all a little bit burned out as a society, and I try and recognize that in myself, and I try and recognize it in others. And I think it's important that we're, kind to ourselves, and, we're a little bit more understanding to others, and we give others a little bit more understanding than sometimes they even deserve. Work-life balance is really important for me. And, in the world today, we have this ability to do so much virtually. But I have to set boundaries for myself because I could sit on my laptop and I could grade one more assignment or one more deal with one more email, especially if I'm working from home. And I think working from home is great because I get to save on gas. I could spend more time with my dogs. But sometimes there's no disconnect, right? Like, what's work life? What's home life? Like, where do we draw the line? And so, one of the things that I do in the evening is, I'll stop working and I'll try and go for my run, and I'll take a shower and I make dinner. And so kind of that, workout shower is kind of the line that I draw between, my work life and my personal life on days that I work from home. Do things for fun. I think it's important that, we have hobbies and fun stuff. If you've had me in class in person, I always ask people, hey, what's new? What's got any good stories? Have we done anything fun? Because I think students don't prioritize that enough, right? I know we're all trying to graduate and go to school and pay our bills, but I think it's really important that we do fun stuff. And so take some time for art, so play video games, read for fun, hang out with your friends, whatever it is that you enjoy. So, personally, I enjoy the outdoors, kayaking, mountain biking, things like that. And I would love to do that stuff every day, but, it's not an easy reality for me. But I do have a good friend, and, one of the things that we do is we get up on, Sunday mornings, and we'll go mountain biking or kayaking or hiking or something like that. And so we both make that a priority, and I think that's really good for my mental health as well as his mental health. Same thing, right? I love to play video games, but I don't have a lot of time for it. But some of my college friends and I, we always we set this time. So Friday night at 10:30, we all meet on Xbox Live and play Halo 3. And so yes, I have a, the new Xbox with, an Elite controller, and I still play Halo 3 on it. So if you have any good Xbox recommendations, let me know. Some other things I like to do, I like to, paint these small Dungeons & Dragons miniatures. I threw one in my pocket for this video. I meant to have it out. But, little guys like this, it's one of the things I like to enjoy. I take some time with it. The last thing, I think it's important to kind of keep a schedule. So I teach, right? And my schedule varies daily. But I try and keep it, as constant, where I can. So, one of my dogs wakes up 6:15 every morning, right? Whether it's, a holiday or a weekend, 6:15, he's up. He has a real hard time with daylight savings time. You can't even talk him out of it. You're like, hey, it's Saturday, let's go back to sleep. He's like, nope, 6:15, time to get up. So I basically get up at 6:15 every morning. I'll go sit outside my yard with my dogs for 30 minutes. I have some coffee, and I feed the dogs, get my family out the door, and I'll take my stepson to school. And if I have to teach a class on campus, I'll drive to campus. If not, I'll go home. And I'll try and do a quick workout in the morning if I'm home, and then take a quick shower, and then I start, working from home for the day, right? And then either at the end of the day, I'll drive home, or I will, kind of stop working. I get home, I go for my run, I take a shower, and I make dinner. And then kind of like, once I've done that, like I'm kind of done for the day, right? Done working. So in the evenings, I go for a walk with my wife, walk the dogs. We usually watch something on, on Netflix together. Sometimes my wife has, online classes, so she takes some classes as well. So some evenings she has online classes, and that's when I'll do stuff like I'll try and play some Xbox, or I'll paint, or things like that. I try and go to bed by midnight, and if you're thinking about the numbers, if I go to bed at midnight and I get up at 6:15, I only get 6 hours of sleep every night. That works for me, right? I'm not somebody who needs 8 hours of sleep. Like if I tried to sleep 8 hours, like I would just wake up super early in the morning. So 6 hours is kind of what I know that I need. In your video, right, it should be 3 to 5 minutes long, right? Again, introduce yourself. I think you should do kind of an assessment of your own mental and physical preparedness for a survival situation. Talk about where you are now, where you want to be, and what's your plan for getting there. Talk about your daily schedule if you have one. Maybe you don't need one. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, right, because we are trying to build community in this online class, let us know what's new and exciting in your life. Do you have any cool news? Did you do anything fun this week? Just let us know. So anyways, thank you for watching, and have a great day. Bye.